You stand outside the birthing chamber. The door is thick oak, iron-banded, sealed from the inside. Candles burn low along the corridor, their smoke sticking to the ceiling like a confession that never quite reaches heaven. Inside, a queen is screaming, not the polite kind of cry you hear in paintings, not the graceful suffering of stained glass saints. This is raw, animal, the kind of sound that makes servants stare at the floor. You smell it before you understand it. Sweat, tallow, wet linen, blood has a way of announcing itself. It is the year 1688 in London, and the fate of the English throne hangs on whether a woman produces a son. Not a healthy child, not a living child, a son. Because in kingdoms built on male inheritance, a daughter is consolation, a son is survival. You shift your weight. You are not allowed inside. Almost no one is. Royal births are strange rituals. Official witnesses must attend to prove legitimacy. Lords, bishops, midwives. Enough eyes to confirm the baby was truly born from the queen's body. But here's the problem. Too many eyes mean too many opportunities. Too many hands mean too many secrets. Inside that chamber lies one of the most explosive scandals in English history. The birth of James Francis Edward Stuart, son of King James II. Within hours of his arrival, rumors spread that the child was not the queen's at all. They called it the warming pan baby. The story went like this: a stillborn child, panic, Catholic monarchy on the brink. A living infant smuggled into the chamber, hidden inside a bedpan used to warm sheets. Ridiculous? Maybe, but understand the stakes. James II was Catholic in a Protestant kingdom. Parliament tolerated him only because his heirs were Protestant daughters from a previous marriage. The moment a Catholic son was born, the future shifted. Suddenly, England faced the possibility of a Catholic dynasty. You don't need dragons when you have inheritance law. The Act of Settlement had not yet been written, but the anxiety was already boiling. The throne was not simply a chair. It was a contract with God, and God, according to political convenience, had strong opinions about male lineage. So when Queen Mary of Modena gave birth after years of miscarriages and stillbirths, suspicion arrived faster than congratulations. Witnesses claimed the room was too crowded to see clearly. Some said they arrived too late. Others whispered that the labor was suspiciously quick. A few swore the child seemed too large. Conspiracy loves poor lighting. Let me explain something that rarely gets said out loud. Medieval and early modern succession was built on the female body, yet women had almost no control over it. Their wombs were state property. Their pain was public spectacle. Their fertility was audited like tax revenue. And if that womb failed, or if it produced the wrong heir, then desperation moved in. Across Europe, the pressure to produce a male successor led to quiet arrangements, hidden pregnancies, faked miscarriages, servants dismissed suddenly, midwives sworn to secrecy under threat of prison, because if a queen could not produce a son, someone else might produce one for her. Here's what matters. The warming pan story helped justify the Glorious Revolution. William of Orange invaded later that year. James II fled. The baby grew up in exile, branded forever as illegitimate in the eyes of many English Protestants. Whether the child was swapped or not almost stopped mattering. Belief became weapon, and that's the pattern you start to notice in royal history. A pregnancy is never just a pregnancy. It is leverage. It is blackmail. It is prophecy. In candlelit corridors like this one, truth is negotiable. And if a baby can secure a throne, imagine what someone might do to make sure that baby exists. Because England was not the first place where the birth chamber became a stage, and it would not be the last. Inside, the Queen screams once more, then silence. And somewhere between that silence and the first cry of a newborn, history changes direction, but the door stays closed, and you realize something chilling. No one outside that room will ever truly know what happened inside. The midwife's oath: you kneel beside the bed. The Queen's hand crushes yours. Her nails dig crescents into your skin. You nod softly, murmuring comfort, but your mind is calculating. You are the midwife. You are trusted, and you are dangerous. In medieval Europe, midwives held knowledge that terrified church authorities. They understood fertility, menstruation, herbal remedies. They could encourage conception. They could prevent it. They could end it, which meant they stood at the edge of power. In 1484, Pope Innocent VIII issued the bull Summus Desiderantis Effectibus, acknowledging widespread fear of witchcraft. Midwives were among the most accused. Why? Because they touched the one thing kings needed most: heirs. If a child was born malformed, stillborn, or suspiciously convenient, blame often fell on the woman who attended the birth. Convenient scapegoat. But midwives were not always victims. Sometimes they were participants. Consider the case of the false dauphins in France. During the wars of religion, rumors circulated that royal children had been replaced to protect them from assassination. In the chaos of factional politics, bodies disappeared. Identities blurred. And in that blur lived opportunity. Here's the brutal truth. Infant mortality was high. In some regions, nearly 1 in 3 children died before age 5. That means grief was common. It also means that the sudden appearance of a healthy infant could be explained away with enough confidence and a few sworn witnesses. A queen suffers multiple miscarriages. The court grows nervous. The king grows impatient. Then, suddenly, a pregnancy succeeds. Miracles happen. Especially when politics demands them. In certain Italian city-states, noble families quietly arranged wet nurses and peasant infants to remain on standby. Insurance policies, if you want to be cold about it. If the noble child died, replacement was possible, provided the swap occurred before too many eyes memorized the infant's features. Infants look remarkably similar when wrapped in linen and candle smoke. Ironic, isn't it? Entire wars fought over babies whose faces no one could clearly remember. Now let's go somewhere darker. In Spain under the Habsburgs, obsession with blood purity was extreme. Limpieza de sangre, cleanliness of blood. No Jewish or Muslim ancestry. Royal marriages between cousins to preserve lineage, which led to deformities. The infamous Habsburg jaw. Charles II of Spain, born 1661. Physically frail, mentally impaired, infertile. The dynasty collapsed with him. But imagine the pressure before that collapse. Imagine being a queen whose womb must deliver perfection to avoid dynastic extinction. You begin to understand why whispers of substitution persisted. Midwives could be bribed, threatened, protected, or silenced. And when church officials insisted on witnessing royal births, it wasn't modesty they worried about, it was fraud. English law eventually required multiple witnesses to observe the moment of delivery in royal households. Curtains drawn back. Sheets lifted. Observers positioned strategically. Romance, but make it bureaucracy. Still, human systems are porous. Doors close. Candles flicker. A moment passes when eyes turn away. That is all it takes. You, kneeling beside the queen, feel the child crown. Or do you? You know that if this birth fails, your future narrows to a cell or a pyre. If it succeeds, you are rewarded. If it succeeds too perfectly, people will ask questions. So you choose carefully what you say next. Because once you announce a son, the kingdom rearranges itself around that word. And you cannot take it back. The queen who would not bleed, you watch her walk the corridor in silk. She glows. Or at least she performs the glow convincingly. The court tracks her cycle like astronomers track comets. Ladies whisper about nausea. Courtiers comment on her appetite. Every gesture is scrutinized. Is she with child, or is she pretending? Phantom pregnancies were not rare. The medical term is pseudocyesis. The body mimics pregnancy under extreme psychological pressure. Swollen abdomen, missed cycles, even sensations resembling movement. In royal courts, pressure could bend reality. Mary I of England believed herself pregnant twice in the 1550s. Bells rang. Preparations were made. Cradles crafted. Both times, no child arrived. Imagine the humiliation. But now consider the reverse. What if a queen announced pregnancy knowing full well no child would come? Buying time. Calming factions. Delaying rebellion. A kingdom can survive uncertainty. It struggles with vacancy. In medieval Scotland, rumors swirled around Margaret, the Maid of Norway, heir to the Scottish throne in the late 13th century. When she died en route to Scotland in 1290, multiple impostors later claimed to be her. Because when succession is fragile, identity becomes negotiable. And sometimes, the most powerful lie is hope. You attend court. You see how politics attaches itself to the queen's body. Factions rise and fall based on the curve of her belly. Foreign ambassadors write coded letters describing her complexion. Pregnancy becomes diplomatic currency. Now here's where the psychological horror sets in. If a queen cannot conceive, she is blamed. If she conceives daughters, she is blamed. If her sons die young, she is blamed. Yet she has the least control. So what options remain? Some turn to relics, pilgrimages, prayers to specific saints of fertility. Others turn to secrecy. In certain courts, favored ladies-in-waiting became dangerously close to the king. Close enough to conceive. Officially, illegitimate. Unofficially, useful. A child born quietly and later elevated under special circumstances. History records several cases of royal bastards legitimized for political reasons. William the Conqueror himself was born out of wedlock in 1028 and still seized England in 1066. Illegitimacy, it turns out, is flexible when armies are involved. You start to see the pattern. Bloodline purity is sacred until it isn't. Moral outrage is loud until it becomes inconvenient. And if a queen needed a son badly enough, might she accept a solution that required silence? The church thundered about chastity and divine order. Meanwhile, in the shadows, survival negotiated its own terms. You pass the queen in the hall. Her hand rests on her stomach. She smiles faintly. You cannot tell if she carries a child or a strategy. But you notice something else. The king looks relieved. And relief, in a palace like this, is rarely innocent. The child who should not exist, the infant, does not resemble the king. You see it immediately. Courtiers pretend not to. They coo, they bow, they congratulate. But glances flicker like candle flames in a draft. Too dark, too sturdy, too small. Pick a reason. There's always one. In 15th century France, during the reign of Charles VI, political factions accused Queen Isabeau of Bavaria of adultery. They claimed her son, the future Charles VII, was illegitimate. Why? Because discrediting the heir destabilized the throne. Simple. In England, during the Wars of the Roses, lineage claims were weapons sharper than swords. If you could prove your rival's birth was flawed, even slightly, you could justify rebellion. So rumors flourished. Children became targets, not with daggers, with doubt. You attend a christening. Holy water drips across the infant's forehead. The priest declares divine approval. But whispers crawl through the pews. Was the labor witnessed properly? Did anyone check the sheets? Who held the baby first? You realize something brutal. Truth in these cases is almost impossible to reconstruct. Documentation was sparse, witnesses biased, political incentives enormous. Which makes the entire system terrifyingly fragile. Now imagine being the child. Raised in luxury. Shadowed by rumor. You are told you are chosen by God. Yet half the kingdom suspects you are a fraud. James Francis Edward Stuart grew up in exile in France and Italy, known to supporters as James III and VIII. To enemies, he was the pretender. His entire identity hinged on a birthroom he could not remember. That is the inheritance of scandal. You did not fake your own arrival. Yet you carry the accusation like a birthmark. And here's the haunting question that refuses to settle. How many royal lineages that shaped Europe, that signed treaties, that declared wars, were built on moments no one verified? How many kings ruled because one door closed at the right time? You stand once more outside a birthing chamber. Another queen, another labor, another kingdom holding its breath. Inside, a midwife prepares linen, a servant waits in the shadows, and somewhere nearby, perhaps, another infant cries, just in case. The door begins to close, and this time, you notice the warming pan sitting a little too close to the bed. The standby cradle. You enter the nursery before dawn. It smells of milk, damp wool, and something faintly sour beneath the sweetness. A cradle rocks in the corner. Not the royal one carved from walnut and inlaid with silver saints. This one is plain, pine, quiet, unremarkable. Insurance. In several European courts, noble households kept wet nurses on permanent retainer. Officially, it was common practice. Royal women often did not nurse their own children. Their bodies were expected to recover quickly for the next pregnancy. Romance is cute. Dynasties require scheduling. But here's what matters. Wet nurses did not arrive alone. They brought infants, sometimes their own. Sometimes recently born children from nearby villages. Healthy, replaceable, tragically abundant in a world where infant mortality hovered between 20 and 30% in many regions. If a royal baby weakened or died in the night, there existed a window. Brief, terrifying, opportunistic. A midwife, a nurse, a trusted chamberlain, a swap. Would it have been common? No. Would it have been possible? Absolutely. In Renaissance Italy, political survival in courts like those of Florence or Milan required ruthless adaptability. The Medici rose from banking to nobility on calculation alone. You think they would risk extinction over sentiment? Be serious. Now shift north. In 14th century England, Edward III fathered numerous children, but survival to adulthood was never guaranteed. Plague, fever, infection. A boy could die from a cough that lasted 3 days. And if a son died quietly before formal presentation to the wider court, knowledge could be contained. The key word is timing. Royal births were sometimes announced before the wider public saw the child. Days could pass. Enough time for adjustments. You walk closer to the plain cradle. The infant inside stirs. Strong lungs, thick hair, healthy pink skin. Across the corridor, the official royal heir sleeps under embroidered velvet. He is weaker. You feel the dread settle in your stomach. If the weaker child dies, the realm destabilizes. Rival claimants awaken. Foreign powers circle. Civil war becomes a forecast, not a fear. If the stronger child replaces him, the kingdom continues. Tell me which option a desperate court chooses, and then ask yourself who carries that secret. Because secrets rot. They pass through generations, through confessionals, through whispered arguments between aging courtiers who drink too much wine and remember too much history. You step back from the cradle. Somewhere in the palace, church bells begin to ring. The air is ill, and the spare is already awake. The church watches the sheets. You stand inside the chamber now. This time, the curtains are pulled wide. In 17th century England and France, royal birth protocols tightened. Witnesses were required to confirm that the child emerged directly from the queen's body. Lords, ladies, clergy, sometimes dozens crammed into overheated rooms. Imagine labor with an audience. Privacy died centuries before the baby did. Why such intensity? Because rumor had proven powerful enough to topple kings. After the warming pan scandal of 1688, Protestant England hardened its succession laws. The Act of Settlement 1701 ensured only Protestant heirs could inherit the throne. Blood mattered. Religion mattered more, which meant births became theological events. Sheets were lifted. Midwives narrated each stage of labor aloud. Some accounts describe witnesses leaning in so closely that modesty became impossible. One French noble reportedly complained, that he saw more than he ever wished to in service of the crown. History is glamorous until you read the footnotes, but even with witnesses, trust was fragile. Consider the case of Marie Antoinette in 1778, when she gave birth to her first child at Versailles. The crowd inside the chamber was so overwhelming that the queen nearly suffocated. The room overheated. People fainted. The king had to order windows smashed open. All to prove the baby was legitimate. Irony. The first child was a daughter. The pressure did not ease. Every contraction became political theater. You move among the witnesses. You feel the tension. Each person knows what is at stake. If the baby emerges healthy and male, alliances strengthen. If not, plots resume. And yet, even in a crowded chamber, perception can be manipulated. Who confirms the exact moment of birth? Who verifies the umbilical cord before it is cut? Who ensures no bundle was smuggled in during chaos? Crowds create confusion as effectively as darkness. You catch the eye of a bishop. His expression is stern. He believes he safeguards divine order, but what he truly safeguards is narrative. Because once he declares the birth legitimate, his authority cements it. And authority is louder than doubt. The queen screams. A midwife announces the crowning. Hands reach forward. And for a single heartbeat, every eye blinks. The pretender's shadow. You stand in a crowded marketplace. A man is shouting that he is the rightful king. People laugh at first, then they lean in. Because the thing about stolen crowns is this: they create permanent doubt. And doubt is fertile soil. Europe produced pretenders the way forests produce fog. After the mysterious death of the princes in the Tower in 1483, two boys who were heirs to the English throne, rumors refused to die. Edward V and his brother Richard vanished inside the Tower of London under their uncle Richard III. Their bodies were never publicly confirmed. Years later, men emerged claiming to be one of the lost princes. Perkin Warbeck gathered serious support in the 1490s, backed by foreign courts eager to destabilize England. Why did people believe him? Because no one saw the bodies clearly. Because secrecy invites resurrection. Now move to Russia in the early 17th century. The time of troubles. After the death of Tsarevich Dmitri under suspicious circumstances in 1591, multiple false Dmitris appeared, each claiming to be the miraculously survived son of Ivan the Terrible. Several gained military backing. One even ruled briefly. That is the cost of opacity in royal succession. When a birth is disputed, or a death is unclear, history fractures. You watch a mother pull her child closer as the pretender speaks. The crowd shifts. Some whisper that he resembles the former king. Others swear he does not. Resemblance is a flexible thing when hope is involved. And here's the brutal irony. Even if the original child was legitimate, even if no swap ever occurred, suspicion alone is enough to destabilize a realm. James Francis Edward Stuart spent his life attempting to reclaim the British throne. To supporters, he was the rightful king. To enemies, he was a fraud born of conspiracy. Two narratives. Same man. Now, imagine if a swap had occurred generations earlier. Imagine if an entire dynasty descended from a single desperate decision in a darkened chamber. Would it matter? You look around the marketplace again. Soldiers arrive. The pretender is seized. The crowd disperses quickly. No one wants to be remembered as having listened too closely. But the rumor does not die. It never dies. It becomes lullaby, legend, political ammunition for the next ambitious noble who smells weakness. You walk away from the square with a quiet realization that the royal baby scam does not need proof to function. It only needs possibility. And possibility lingers longer than any crown. The bloodline illusion. You return to the corridor where this began. Another chamber. Another queen. Another kingdom holding its breath. But now you see differently. You understand that monarchy rests on something fragile. Belief in biological continuity. The idea that power passes cleanly from one body to another. Father to son. Mother to heir. Divine order made flesh. Yet history is messy. Henry VIII shattered England's religious identity over succession anxiety. The Tudor line teetered repeatedly on the edge of extinction. Elizabeth I ruled unmarried, ending the dynasty entirely in 1603. The Stuarts replaced them. Then the Hanoverians. Then others. Each transition wrapped in legal justification. Parliamentary acts. Genealogies traced carefully back through generations. But genealogies are only as strong as the records kept in candlelight. And candlelight flickers. You think about the countless royal births across medieval and early modern Europe. The closed doors, the selective witnesses, the midwives who knew too much, the servants who carried bundles through shadowed corridors. You think about the infants who died unnamed, the mothers who wept, privately while publicly smiling, the fathers who pretended certainty. And you realize something uncomfortable. Royal legitimacy was never purely biological. It was negotiated. Church endorsement, noble acceptance, military backing, public narrative. If enough powerful people agreed a child was legitimate, then he was. If enough refused, he was not. Blood mattered, but power decided. You stand once more outside a birthing chamber. Inside, a queen cries out. Officials gather. Clergy murmur prayers. The door closes. And you ask yourself a question no court historian can answer with certainty. How many of the kings and queens who shaped the world descended from a single quiet lie? How many wars were fought over blood that may not have belonged to the man who claimed it? You imagine a lineage tree carved in stone. Now imagine one branch grafted subtly from another tree in the dead of night. Would anyone know centuries later? DNA might, if bones survive, if graves are opened, if politics allows it. But for most of history, truth dissolved into parchment and rumor. And here's the final dread. We build nations on stories of origin. Sacred founders, chosen heirs, pure bloodlines. Yet if even one generation bends the truth to survive, everything that follows inherits the bend. You hear the newborn cry loud, defiant, alive. The chamber door opens. A court official announces the words, "Every kingdom waits for. It is a son." The corridor erupts in relief. You do not. Because you have walked these halls long enough to know that the cry of a baby does not prove anything. And somewhere, perhaps in a quiet village far from the palace walls, another mother holds an empty cradle, while history crowns her child king.